What if I told you that the reason you're stressed, anxious, and constantly overwhelmed isn't because bad things happen to you? What if the real problem is that you're giving way too many fucks about the wrong things? And what if there was a way to fix this, starting today? Stay with me, because what I'm about to share with you from Mark Manson's best-selling book could completely change how you see your problems, your stress, and your entire life. Here's the thing, we've all been there, right? You're lying in bed at 2 a.m., scrolling through your phone, getting worked up about some random person's opinion on the internet. Meanwhile, you haven't called your mom in weeks. You're avoiding that important conversation with your partner, and you keep putting off that project that could actually change your life. Sound familiar? This is exactly what Mark Manson talks about in The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And before you think this book is about becoming some cold, heartless person who doesn't care about anything, it's actually the complete opposite. This book isn't about not caring. It's about caring better. It's about learning to give your fucks to the things that actually matter instead of wasting them on drama that won't matter next week. Mark Manson became famous because he said what everyone was thinking but nobody wanted to admit. Most self-help advice is garbage. Instead of promising you'll be happy all the time, he tells you the truth. Life is hard, problems never go away, and that's actually okay. Today, we're going to break down his game-changing ideas that have helped millions of people stop stressing about the small stuff and start focusing on what really counts. Ready? Let's dive in. Chapter 1. The Feedback Loop from Hell. Alright, let's start with something that's probably happening to you right now without you even realizing it. Have you ever felt anxious and then felt bad about feeling anxious? Like you're worried about something, and then you start thinking, why am I so worried? I shouldn't be worried about this. What's wrong with me? Congratulations, you've just entered what Manson calls the feedback loop from hell. Here's how it works. You feel bad about something. Then you feel bad about feeling bad. Then you feel bad about feeling bad about feeling bad. And it just keeps going and going and going. It's like having a song stuck in your head, except the song is just you beating yourself up for having emotions. Manson realized this was happening to him all the time. He'd be nervous about a presentation at work. Then he'd get frustrated with himself for being nervous. Come on, Mark, he'd think. It's just a presentation. Why are you such a mess? But here's the crazy part. This just made him more nervous, because now he wasn't just worried about the presentation. He was also worried about being worried about the presentation. Does this sound exhausting? Because it is. So where does this come from? Our culture has this obsession with being positive all the time. We're told we should be happy, confident, and grateful 24/7. If you're sad, anxious, or frustrated, something must be wrong with you, right? Wrong. Manson says this is complete nonsense. Negative emotions aren't bugs in your system. They're features. They're trying to tell you something important. If you're anxious about your health, maybe you should see a doctor. If you're frustrated at work, maybe it's time to look for a new job. If you're sad about a relationship, maybe you need to have a difficult conversation. But when we tell ourselves we shouldn't feel these things, we stop listening to what they're trying to tell us. The solution isn't to stop having negative emotions. The solution is to have better reasons for having them. Instead of being anxious about what strangers think of your Instagram posts, maybe be anxious about whether you're growing as a person. Instead of being angry about traffic, maybe be angry about injustices you can actually do something about. This is the first step in the subtle art of not giving a fuck, recognizing that your emotional energy is limited and you get to choose how to spend it. Chapter 2. Happiness is a problem. Okay, this next part might blow your mind a little bit. What if I told you that trying to be happy all the time is actually what's making you miserable? I know, it sounds backwards, but stick with me here. Think about it like this. When was the last time you were truly, genuinely happy? Not just content or okay, but actually happy. Now, how long did that feeling last? A few minutes? Maybe an hour? Here's what Manson figured out. Happiness isn't a destination you reach and then stay at forever. It's more like a sneeze. It happens, it feels good, and then it's over. Your brain is basically a problem-solving machine. It's constantly looking for issues to fix. And here's the kicker. When you solve one problem, your brain immediately starts looking for the next one. Let's say you're stressed about money. So you work hard, get a raise, and suddenly, you're not worried about money anymore. Great, right? Wrong. Now you're worried about whether your coworkers resent you for getting the raise, or you're stressed about the extra responsibilities, or you're anxious about whether you can keep up the performance. Your brain literally cannot just sit there and be satisfied. It's not designed that way. So what's the solution? Instead of asking, how can I be happy? Manson says we should ask, what problems am I willing to solve? Think about someone you know who seems really fulfilled. Maybe they're a parent, or they run their own business, or they're training for a marathon. Are they happy all the time? Of course not. Parents deal with sleepless nights and tantrums. Business owners stress about money and difficult customers. Marathon runners push through pain and exhaustion. But they chose these problems. They decided these struggles were worth it because they care about the end result. Here's a question that might change everything for you. What are you willing to struggle for? What problems do you actually want to have? Because you're going to have problems either way. You might as well pick ones that matter to you. The surfer who gets up at 5 a.m. to catch waves isn't happy about losing sleep, but they're willing to solve the problem of being tired because surfing means something to them. The key isn't avoiding problems, it's choosing problems that align with what you actually care about. This completely flips the script on how most people think about success and happiness. Instead of trying to eliminate struggle from your life, you start choosing struggles that make your life meaningful. Chapter 3. You are not special. All right, this next chapter has probably the most uncomfortable title in the whole book. But bear with me, because this might be the most liberating thing you'll hear today. You are not special. I can practically hear some of you getting ready to click away. Wait, what? My mom told me I was special. My teachers said I could be anything I wanted. And look, I'm not trying to crush your dreams here, but Manson makes a really important point about what happens when we believe we're naturally gifted at everything. Here's his story. For years, Mark thought he was destined for greatness. He was going to be a famous musician, a successful entrepreneur, someone everyone would admire. The problem? He wasn't actually doing anything to become great at these things. He was just waiting for his natural talent to kick in, waiting for someone to discover him, waiting for success to find him. Sound familiar? Here's what Manson realized. Believing you're special can actually prevent you from becoming special. When you think you deserve success just for existing, you don't put in the work to actually earn it. When you expect to be naturally good at everything, you give up as soon as something feels difficult. But here's the plot twist. Accepting that you're ordinary is actually the first step to becoming extraordinary. Let me give you an example. You know those people who seem naturally good at everything, the ones who pick up new skills effortlessly. Here's their secret. They're comfortable being terrible at things. When they try something new, they don't expect to be good right away. They're okay with looking foolish, making mistakes, and slowly getting better. Meanwhile, the people who think they should be naturally gifted, they try something once, realize they're not immediately amazing at it, and give up. Think about learning to drive. Remember how terrible you were at first? You probably stalled the car, took turns too wide, maybe even hit a curb or two. Did you think, well, I guess I'm just not a driving person, and give up? Of course not. You kept practicing because you knew everyone starts somewhere. You tried something different, you learned something, and you executed it exactly as you planned. But somehow, when it comes to other skills, starting a business, learning an instrument, getting in shape, We expect to be good right away. Manson calls this exceptionalism, the belief that we're either amazing at something or we're worthless at it. There's no middle ground. But real life happens in the middle ground. Real success comes from being willing to be mediocre for as long as it takes to get good. Here's what's actually special: being willing to do boring, ordinary work for a long time to achieve something meaningful. The entrepreneur who answers customer service emails for months before they hire anyone, that's special. The writer who writes terrible first drafts for years before they publish anything, that's special. The person who goes to the gym consistently even when they don't feel like it, that's special. Being willing to be ordinary is what makes you extraordinary. Chapter 4. The Value of Suffering. Okay, this might sound a little intense, but stick with me, because this could change how you see every challenge in your life. What if suffering isn't something to avoid? What if it's actually valuable? Before you think I've lost my mind, let me explain what Manson means. There are basically two types of suffering in life. There's meaningless suffering, like getting stuck in traffic, dealing with rude people, or worrying about things you can't control. And then there's meaningful suffering, the temporary discomfort that comes from pursuing something worthwhile. Think about working out. When you lift weights, you're literally damaging your muscles on purpose. It hurts, it's uncomfortable, but that discomfort is exactly what makes you stronger. The muscle doesn't grow in spite of the pain. It grows because of the pain. Now imagine if you tried to get fit without any discomfort. You'd do the easiest exercises, avoid anything that made you sweat, and quit the moment you felt any strain. Would you get stronger? Of course not. The same thing applies to every other area of life. Want to start a business? You'll have to deal with the discomfort of not knowing what you're doing, the anxiety of financial uncertainty, and the frustration of setbacks. Want better relationships? You'll have to have difficult conversations, set boundaries, and sometimes disappoint people. Want to learn new skills? You'll have to embrace being a beginner, making mistakes, and feeling confused. Here's what Manson realized. Our culture has become obsessed with comfort and convenience. We want everything to be easy, fast, and painless. But when you avoid all discomfort, you also avoid all growth. It's like trying to build muscle without ever feeling sore, or trying to learn without ever feeling confused. It just doesn't work that way. So how do you know if your suffering is worthwhile? Ask yourself, does this discomfort serve a purpose that matters to me? If you're stressed because you're working on a project you care about, that's probably good stress. If you're anxious because you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone to grow, that's probably good anxiety. If you're tired because you're putting in extra effort on something meaningful, that's probably good tired. But if you're suffering because you're trying to please everyone, or because you're avoiding important decisions, or because you're focused on things you can't control, that's suffering that doesn't serve you. This doesn't mean you should go looking for pain just for the sake of it. It means when you encounter discomfort in pursuit of something worthwhile, you don't have to run away from it. You can lean into it, knowing that this temporary suffering is the price of growth. The question isn't, how can I avoid all discomfort? The question is, what am I willing to be uncomfortable for? Chapter 5. You are always choosing. This next part is probably the most empowering thing in the entire book, but it might also be the most challenging to accept. You are always choosing. Now before you say, but wait, I didn't choose for my boss to be difficult, or I didn't choose to get stuck in traffic, let me explain what Manson means. You're right, you don't choose what happens to you, but you always choose how you respond to what happens to you. Let me give you an example. Two people get laid off from their jobs on the same day. Same situation, same circumstances. Person A thinks this is terrible, the economy is awful, companies don't care about employees, I'm too old to find another job, my life is ruined. Person B thinks, this sucks, but maybe it's an opportunity. I wasn't happy there anyway. Now I can look for something better, or maybe even start that business I've been thinking about. Same event, completely different responses, and those different responses will lead to completely different outcomes. Manson calls this responsibility, your ability to choose your responses. Now, this doesn't mean that all situations are the same, or that everyone has the same options. Some people face genuinely difficult circumstances that limit their choices. But even in the most challenging situations, we still have some degree of choice in how we respond. Here's where this gets really powerful. When you realize you're always choosing, you stop being a victim of your circumstances. Instead of thinking, why is this happening to me, you start thinking, how do I want to respond to this? Instead of this isn't fair, you think, what can I do with the situation I'm actually in? Let's talk about the difference between fault and responsibility, because this confuses a lot of people. If someone treats you badly, that's their fault. You didn't cause it, you didn't deserve it, and you're not to blame. But how you respond to being treated badly, that's your responsibility. You can choose to let it ruin your day, or you can choose to set boundaries and move on. You can choose to carry resentment, or you can choose to learn from the experience. You can choose to see yourself as a victim, or you can choose to see yourself as someone who's building resilience. As people undergo a rigorous process of personal development, there has to be a receptive mindset, a desire to hope that better things can be found. This isn't about being positive. You have the power to choose your thoughts, your actions, and your responses. Here's a simple exercise you can try. Next time something frustrating happens, instead of asking why me, try asking, how do I want to handle this? Instead of this shouldn't be happening, try this is happening, what are my options? It's a small shift, but it changes everything. Because suddenly, instead of being stuck in a situation, you're someone who's actively choosing how to deal with a situation. And that feeling of choice, that's where your power lives.